So what has it been like having Alicia on your team as a defensive native?
Well, we're thrilled. I mean, she definitely brings a dimension to our offense and our defense that has been very impactful this year. You know, her mobility certainly in transition, her length inside, really good rebounder. I think she alluded to how much she's been spending time in the gym with Coach Dean in particular, just really honing in on her skills. I mean, that kid really wants to be good. And a lot of people talk about it, but not a lot of people put it into action. So, I mean, we're just thrilled to have her entire family. You know, this East Lansing community I know appreciates her and her family. So, to have her in a Spartan uniform, we're thrilled.
And just a quick follow-up to that, what are your general thoughts on the matchup with Penn State that's coming up?
Yeah, I mean, they're a very talented team. They get up and down in transition. They really can score. They're a little positionless when it comes to how they play, which is difficult. You know, everybody can shoot a three for the most part. Everybody can get to the rim, so they're combination players. They can go 4 out, 5 out. They press. They can play zone, man. So they're very, you know, they're a very multidimensional team. And certainly when you go on the road, that's always a challenge. You know, this is the second year for that coach. They have a huge change in their roster. I think there's only like 3 or 4 kids. I know 3 for sure. There might be more, but there's only 3 that I know of, like in their rotations, that were actually here last year that played a lot of minutes and, you know, were a part of it. And I think they've had some transition, or they're freshmen, or they've had quite a few transfers, like everybody has in the country. So, you know, they're a different team the way they attack people compared to a year ago.
And we'll go next over to Audrey Dahlgren.
So then, Suzy, this question might not really apply then, I guess, maybe when we were asking Alicia how much she knows from the team that she was on prior to coming, you know, with that Penn State team before coming here. So really, did she not that she didn't play a factor in helping you guys scout, but it's kind of a different team as you're mentioning.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, there's 3 kids that that she played with that were on the roster a year ago that she would have like been on the court with and locker rooms and things like that. So they've either had kids transition out, transfer out, or you know, there's new kids that are coming in and playing. So, you know, they're you know, they established some things a year ago, but now that, you know, Carolyn's been able to kind of get her own type of players in terms of what she wants to fit in her style, you know, positionless basketball, playing very up tempo. I mean, those are things that I think that she has really done a great job of at Penn State in terms of, you know, facilitating and getting involved in their personnel. So, yeah, I mean, it's interesting when you ask that question because, you know, of their top like 8 kids, really, you know, 8 or 9, she's only played with 3 of them consistently. Everybody else is either a transfer or a freshman.
And then how was the, I guess, energy and focus in the last couple of days that you've had in order to practice? I know that that was a concern for you at the Northwestern game, just, you know, the energy aspect. So how has that been?
Yeah, it's been good, Audrey. I appreciate that question because, you know, I don't know what happened in that first half, but that's probably the most I've seen Red in a long time, you know, because I just think, like, you want what's best for your players and you want them to be the best they can be. And, like, whenever you have to coach attitude and effort, and we didn't have bad attitudes, I just want them to have one. Like, in the first half, I'm like, can somebody get an attitude about this right now? We're getting walloped. You know, and then our effort level was just sort of like non-existent. So that second half, I mean, we were right there. We came back, I mean, to, you know, eliminate that 19-point deficit. And we're not a great pressing team per se. I mean, we can press, but that certainly isn't anything we did. We weren't trapping. We did a couple adjustments technically, but really it was just a little bit of guts, you know, and that's the one thing that we've really talked about. It's like, I think as a coach, if you have to spend time revving people up or getting their effort level high, you know, it's hard to focus on changing a ball screen or a defense or run a play because you're just trying to get people ramped up. So that's something they've talked about collectively. We've talked about as a group, and they recognize it. I mean, again, we have a lot of new kids on the roster too, you know, with experience that haven't had a lot of experience. I mean, Ty's a second-year kid, but you know, she was a very limited role player behind somebody else, you know, that kind of thing. You know, Julia, same way, you know. So these kids, as sophomores, this is their first real go-around of having teeth in what they have to do. So being consistent in the grind is always the hardest thing. But I mean, that second half team I'll take to war any day, any day. It just, we can't have lapses like that. We have to be a little bit better and a little bit better leadership.
Thank you.
Yep.
We'll go next to Brian Calloway.
Suzy, with where you guys are at in the NCAA tournament picture and also just the Big Ten standings, how important is a game like Saturday against Penn State and just really the next few weeks for your program?
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, the next, 24, 25 days is kind of all we have left, I think, in the regular season. And ironically, we don't know what that looks like in some situations because we still have some makeup games. So, to let one go, like a Northwestern, who's, to me, a team that we certainly could have beat, should have beat if we would have been a little more consistent. I take a lot of responsibility for that. I'm not sure we didn't come out the way we should have, and that's on me as a coach. So, at the end of the day, that is kind of where the fault lies and the blame lies, and so I need to do a better job of making sure maybe we're doing things in practice to keep it a little more competitive, maybe a little more consequence based so that when they're in a position like that, they don't let 1 or 2 quarters kind of go to waste, right? We're not there yet. So we don't have that luxury. And so as you mentioned, I mean, coming down the stretch, I think in the pandemic, you don't know what's going to happen. When we still have an Illinois and Indiana, 2 Michigan games to make up, I don't even know if we're going to get them or not. I'm assuming we'll get at least 1 Michigan game. Will we get 2? I don't know. So we just have to really look at what's in front of us, let everything go and play the best basketball that we can play. But our men have that huge video screen in their aux gym, and they had it walking out yesterday. It said 25 days left in the regular season. And that was like, wow, that hit you hard. I mean, that's under a month. And, we got a couple of seniors, but for the most part, that just kind of puts it in perspective. So your question is kind of certainly well pointed, especially when you see 24, 25 days, whatever it is now. So we have some work to do. This is a big game. Every game's a big game, and that's not coach speak. That's the reality of it.
Also, too, I know last week you had mentioned that there was a meeting the Big Ten had. I mean, has there kind of been any light shed on the possibility of when some of those games could take place for you guys? I know you guys are off, for like a week, almost a week after Saturday's game here.
Yeah, and that's the frustrating. We gave up this Thursday. We're supposed to play at Maryland. We gave that game up thinking we could maybe get another one in here. And now we sat idle for a week when, we went to Maryland. They were coming off a loss. And I'm like, oh, that could have been better timing. Meeting Maryland off a loss is never ideal, right? Especially at home. So, I mean, we got their best game and give them a lot of credit. They're a really good team. But, I think for us right now, that was kind of a bummer because there's been a lot of teams that have been idle. And so there was actually no game. So we just try to do the balance, is there an opportunity for us to do rest and get our rest in, but at the same time, what can we do to get better as a team and continue to get better? So having a good balance. But I don't know, I feel like, we're about to drink out of a fire hose is kind of what I think. There seems to be sentiment. I haven't seen anything on social media because I've been kind of diving into the scout, but it sounds like for sure the women are going to have a Big Ten tournament. I've kind of been a proponent of thinking maybe we could use that time to better align our teams to get in the NCAA tournament with matchups and certain things to fill in. But it sounds like we're going to move in a direction where we're definitely going to have the Big Ten tournament. So that takes out that opportunity. So, long story short, and kind of answer your question, there hasn't been anything definitive right now. I think it's sort of who's playing who when and who hasn't played and when, who's out. Right now, all our teams are playing. So there's nobody that has canceled as of today at this point. So that makes it a little more difficult, too.
Thanks.
And I think they are looking at one other game. It hasn't been announced, but I think we may get a makeup game next week. It hasn't been set in stone yet, but I think, we had Ohio State was probably our first one. And I think they're trying to find a time next week for us to play that game. It hasn't come out exactly what day it is. But I do think that might be one next on our radar after this Penn State game.
So I'll go over now to Natalie Kerwin.
Suzy, so we know what Alicia can do physically on the court, especially of lately, bringing that consistency to you guys and becoming a reliable scorer. Does she bring a lot of leadership skills as well? I know, from what it sounds like, she's a very hard worker, getting time in the gym, trying to improve herself as a player. But as far as being a leader, what kind of skills does
Yeah, she's an exceptional human being, and I think it always starts there. What kind of character you have, what kind of work ethic do you have? It's hard to be a leader if you don't have street cred, and in a short period of time, she's been able to kind of earn that. She's a very vocal kid. She's not as vocal as Janae, for example, but when she says something, she means it. You can hear her on the sidelines all the time in practice. She's a veteran player. She's an older kid, too. She's a very mature young lady. So, it's sort of natural for her to kind of step into that role, even though this is sort of her first year here. So I just think, people have a great deal of respect for her just coming in out of the gates, the way she carries herself both on and off the court. And when you have that, it makes it easy for you to step into that leadership role. But she's been, a true blessing to have. That kid is... I can't wait to watch her in the next year or two, with this kind of being a COVID year and another year and working with Dean. She's completely committed to her craft, which is really fun to watch.
We have time for one more question from Audrey.
Suzy, you mentioned Michigan and not maybe being able to play both of those meetings against them. Is that realistically something that might happen, or what's the conversation been like with the U of M, or is that more through the Big Ten?
Yeah, that's a Big Ten thing, Audrey. I think we're just waiting to hear from them. I suspect that they would try because we're so close and financially it makes sense. But I think our men right now only have them on the, as of right now, once. So I'm not sure if they're going to add another game. It makes sense, certainly, for us to do that versus, maybe go play somebody else and spend that kind of money. And again, people have to be, you can't be tone deaf to the budget. People have lost their jobs, gone on furlough. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. We're no different. Football looked uniquely different this year, so that's a lot of our revenue stream. So, what can we do to get the games we need to certainly, help ourselves to advance and have a postseason opportunity in the NCAA tournament? And so, with us being so close, I know we were going to play almost back-to-back, like a Tuesday, Thursday, before they got shut down with that B117 virus. So, I don't know. We'll wait and see. I suspect that we would be high on the list to try and get us 2 games, but I don't know. They just literally are trying to figure out the tournament right now. I think that just kind of went through yesterday, or there was conversation about how that is going to look for the men and the women in the same place. So I think, they're just drinking out of a fire hose themselves, trying to figure it out day to day. So I don't know. It'll be interesting. I've heard nothing about those games being rescheduled. And then looking at Michigan's schedule, kind of like this week, they had games they weren't ready, or they had games ready to go that they had to make up, because I think they had 3 or 4 before Christmas on top of what they got shut down. So they're in a tough spot for sure in terms of getting games.
Yeah, it'll be very, you said the fire hose analogy is spot on.
Get ready. We're going to be like the NBA G League or whatever. We're going to play every other day. We're like the bubble teams in the WNBA and the NBA, where you're playing like every other day and you're walking by people in the locker or in the lobby. You'd be like, hey, can I buy you a drink? So yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting to see. It's like, hello, we just met yesterday, Right. So I think there's going to be a lot of that, a lot of quick games, quick turnarounds.
Thank you.
You're welcome.